Hi, everyone. Hi, here we are with Stewart. Tell us your name, company name, and a little bit about your company.
Hello everyone, I'm Stu. I founded a business called Manilife uh, seven odd years ago. Manilife was is the best tasting peanut butter brand I think in the world, and was originally a peanut butter brand that I started at a Rubber Club Kitchen. Our kind of ethos is to do what happened to coffee 20 odd years ago to peanut butter. So that's like better tasting product through better ingredients sourced directly. We operate a single estate sourcing model. We make in small batches, and all of our ingredients have a kind of rich relationship and provenance story behind them. I said originally peanut butter because my new role in the business is innovation, and we are expanding our products at a rate of knots. So we recently launched a range of snacking peanuts,
I
but
saw
we're going
that.
to do the same. Yeah, they are banging. You'll love them if you haven't had them already. Uh, and we're going to do the same for peanuts. It's quite interesting actually. So like, obviously peanuts just peanuts, and this was the thing we always spoke about with coffee, with peanut butter. Sorry, but we sell a roasted salted peanut, which is basically like KP, right? But it's just like insanely better.
Next level.
So yeah, really excited about that, and then a few more products in the pipeline.
Brilliant. So, good food is.
So good food is obviously delicious, and I think delicious is built from the kind of the pairing principles, and how all the food interacts together, all the ingredients interact together. I think a really important thing for me is that it's consumed together, and kind of more than that, it's like unifying. And that's not just sat around a dinner table. That's like the stories behind it, the people behind it, and people being aware of them. Um, and I think a big one, which is in the cultural zeitgeist of today, is that it's made from real stuff. Um, I think it's really interesting. So I was in Europe with my wife, obviously, and everyone in Europe, from what I saw, seemed really healthy. And even though the kind of, for instance, France, like super fatty diet, right? But I think one of the reasons why they're in so much better shape than the Yanks and some extent us is that there's this culture of actually making food at home, and also a culture of occasion. It's very hard to get super unhealthy if you make homemade food and eat it around the dinner table. So
Very
yeah,
good. Very good. Very good. I love that. To
yeah,
me, food is it's everything. It's
mm,
cooking, it's the being in the kitchen, it's
mm,
Sarah and I, although Sarah does most of the cooking,
yeah,
it's being aware of what you're cooking and what's going in
yeah,
and then enjoying it. Brilliant. So, what
yeah.
got you into the independent food industry?
Um, so a few things, and I'll go into them after if you want. I had a job offer as an accountant, so there's nothing more kind of motivating than a job you don't really like, uh, or yeah, that doesn't really float your boat. Um, I think that paired with, I probably always had a desire to do something a bit out of the ordinary and start that out. Food's not necessarily out of the ordinary, but I think starting my own business was always kind of in that realm. Um, and then ultimately it was this year I spent living in Argentina where I not only met a lot of the people that we still work with today, who I just loved, and always kind of joked that if the people I'd met made honey, I'd have started the honey brand. But also whilst I was there, I worked with a we peanut butter social enterprise, and through that, the kind of entrepreneurial um, mystique was taken, like was demystified. The guy was just as clueless as I was, and I am. And then the last one was this like very deep understanding that as ultimately like a posh boy from Southwest London with no dependents, uh, there was very little risk to me kind of having a crack. Like if it failed, I could just go get another job and I could live with my parents. And I did. And to be honest, if I hadn't met my wife, I probably still would be with my parents. I love my parents. Uh, and indeed with that, it's like the risk of almost the risk of not having a crack was greater because I'd always been thinking, what the hell am I doing?
Interesting.
Um, so yeah, those, what's that, 4 or 5 things? I can't remember.
No, that's great. So what's been a high point and a low point in the company so far?
Um, so let's start with the low points, or low point. There've always been quite a few, as you'll know. It can be pretty tough, pretty run ragged when you do this kind of thing. I think the big one, and we can maybe talk about this at a later date, because it's quite a big topic, is I burnt out savagely, like savagely, at the end of 2021. I mean, without going too much into the details, it was I just like, couldn't function at all, and that was the result of maybe 5 or 6 years of just relentless, dogged, solving everything through hard work, um, and probably a motivation that came from not necessarily a very wholesome place. So that was definitely the low point. And then the high point, again, there's been a few. One that came to mind was, so when you start a business, a lot of the success and operational stuff revolves around you. But as you grow, it kind of clearly and obviously becomes more about the team you build around you. And so real high point was during quite early on in lockdown. I was out of work for 2 weeks. I was ill. I had like the original COVID. The only one that was actually worth writing home about. After that came a bit of nonsense.
That's so
and so I was off. Like I hadn't been off probably ever, but I was off for 2 weeks. And the team were just amazing. I think we had like the best 2 weeks ever. I felt pretty proud of what we built then from a people perspective.
right.
So yeah, low and high point.
No, that's good. So what one thing would you do differently if you could start again?
So probably two things. And following on from that last low point is I would definitely look after myself a bit better and clock early that working harder and harder isn't always the best way to solve the problem. I mean, there's obviously cases where that is needed, and especially early on, but smarter and more kind of, yeah, holistically focused, generally tends to yield better results and better long-term results. So ultimately, don't burn out. And then the next one is probably invest in a team earlier on, and bring in not too much experience, because I think that can tip you over the wrong way. But we had a very young team for a very long time, and they were all great. But I think if we just had 1 or 2 extra heads that had maybe like even like 2, 3 years in the industry would have been a massive help. We were for a long time just a bunch of novices running around. So yeah, those two things.
It's interesting. Capsicana said that about mentors and just having people in the business that,
Yeah.
With experience, really.
Yeah. See, I had lots of mentors and they're all great. But again, the mentors, they weren't even they weren't even industry people.
Right.
You mentored me a bit actually early on, which was great. And I always remember that. But our board for the first 6 years, there was a year or two when we had a guy called Chris D, who was awesome. But again, he was the retail side. So we didn't have anyone involved who had run or even worked in a food brand for any time at all until 3 or 4 years in,
Right.
which is insane.
Mm-hmm. I always, there's an analogy I always use. I used to go mountain biking in Exeter, and there was a big hill that we used to leave Ken Ford and go up this hill. And the guy that used to lead it used to race in the Alps, and he would just cycle up this hill really quickly.
Yeah.
And it was a huge effort for me.
Yeah.
But I always used to say that if we all went out and were the same level, the hill would have been really hard for everyone.
Yeah.
We had somebody out in the front that had done it before.
Yeah.
We knew where we were going. We knew what we were aiming for.
Because exactly.
He didn't have to say anything. He was just leading with experience.
Yeah, exactly.
And just having somebody that looks back at the business and says, actually, we just need to do this, as opposed to what do we do?
Yeah, it's quite useful. And also, you only need one of them for every three people who don't have a clue. So I think a lot of the reason why we brought on young, inexperienced people is because we didn't have any money,
Hmm.
which makes sense, right? But probably if we'd got in invested a little bit more in one earlier, then they would have helped build it to a stage where we could have afforded more.
I always remember, was it Manny points you used to pay people with? Or was it Manny somethings?
So we had a kind of a legion of they're essentially drug dealers, but peanut butter. So we would sell them like discounted cases, and they would just ship it to their friends, and we had a lot of personal trainers actually who sold it to their clients, and that was awesome because
Yes.
it was a kind of like secret, and I actually think those seeds that were planted early on, they still have a bit of an impact today. Like there is very much I mean, this maybe goes to show we need to do a better job of getting more people to know about us. But there is still, even though we're pretty mainstream listed in loads of supermarkets, there's still this sense of like you're sharing a secret with people, which is cool.
There's a lovely guy, Giles from Olives Hotel, and I had a chat with him years ago. Stuart, can you just bring your camera down a little bit? Oh, brilliant.
I'm slouching a slouch. There you
go. And
yeah,
and he said it was fantastic. He said about the DNA of the business, and he said so many food producers don't get or understand the DNA of the businesses, and they didn't work in it really hard at the beginning. You know, there was a co-packer, there was a people came in there. You know, it's fine, but once you get that DNA of the business in your sense, it's massively. People see it.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's
What one bit of advice were you given at the start that you would disagree with now, and what one bit of advice would you stand by?
So we thought about this a bit before the call. I think one thing I heard, and to some extent still here, is obsess over your competitors. And I think to be honest, I completely disagree. I think like obsess over your customer, play your own game, and be aware of what's going on around you. But like, if you're just delivering better and continuing to grow for your customer, then I think you'll win. The classic kind of cliche example of this is Amazon. Like if Amazon was focused on their competitors, they'd be like a hundredth or a thousandth of the size, but they were just single-mindedly focused on the customer. So that's one which I disagree with. And then one that I had early on and to some extent listened to, but to be honest, didn't really. It was from a lovely guy called Gordon Leatherdale. I haven't seen for years, which I'm going to call off this. And he basically said that you can surround yourself with too many advisors. Like advisors are great, but they're kind of like shiny things. And he said the only one you really need is your wife. And at the time, she was my girlfriend. Obviously, like caveat this with the fact I've had some great advisors and still do, and they've offered me lots and helped get us where we are today. But the thing that's quite funny is that, like throughout the journey, the number of times I followed their advice and Saz has reminded me that she told me to do that like 6 months before is insane. Like it's like a frequent occurrence.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's a very valid one.
Nice. That's really cool. So what food brand do you admire the most and why?
So I thought quite a lot about this actually, and there's maybe three, all for kind of similar-ish reasons. So I don't know, just pronounce it like Hui Fong Sriracha. So the original Sriracha guy.
Yeah.
Just because he built it from nothing, like never took on any money. It was a pure ingredient, like it's something that you have with meals. So it's like a unifying ingredient. You can't snack on it. And while snacking's great, and obviously we're launching peanuts, the thing which I really like is the idea that like your brand is involved in bringing people together. And yeah, just create something that didn't exist before. And it's just like got there through graft and basically creating an amazing product. Uh, Another one is Joe and Seth's Popcorn. To know them quite well. We're actually developing a product with them at the moment. And I just think with that, they launched around the time of the kind of popcorn explosion, and the brands around them immediately went like mass mainstream, raised a shed load of money, and it was almost like a pump and dump. And ultimately, the popcorn sides of those businesses have not gone to nothing, but they're far smaller than they were, and there was a lot of hype. One of the popcorn proper obviously built a massive kind of chips business on the back of it. But they again didn't raise any money, made the product themselves, and focused on just like channels that were unexplored, way better products, and have a really healthy business that people love. And I think because they built this strong base, there's a lot of opportunity to take it to places they haven't taken it to, like they're not really in retail at all. And then the last one, who I think worked with you a bit in the early days, is business called Hilltop, run by a good friend, Scott Davis, he's just like an absolute legend. The guy, he started it with like, it was like a $5,000 loan. He's going to hate me this, but middle of nowhere, middle of Wales, and he's built this thing into an absolute beast. And his sole, not his sole motivation was kind of take down rows. And what's interesting is that if he'd set that business up in London, he'd have probably been swooped up by like a load of private equity funds. He'd have spent loads of time doing, I don't know, press and all this kind of stuff, which is fun and great and clearly a part of the process. But because he started at the back end of Wales, no one clocked him. And now he's like a 35 million turnover business. And he's again never raised any money, owns the whole thing. He's like the number one employer in his town. Yeah, so I've got a lot of respect for Scott personally, but also the brand. So yeah, those three.
That's great. I could talk on all of those, but yeah, fascinating. I mean, that the Hilltop one, great. And again, they just focused on getting on and selling honey.
Yeah,
they didn't get, as you say, just quietly got on and sold the product. I say, Abilene is the #1 tomato brand because they just got on and sold tomatoes. Didn't get sucked into all the other distractions that people think in 2023, and mainly because I think back then that's what you did. When Mum set up work, you just got on the phone and sold the product. That's what you did. There wasn't even the internet actually.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Scott's big thing was he launched as like a mega premium honey brand, and then decided that if he was going to make an impact and sell to like lots of people, he had to make a call between like driving a really premium honey brand really, really hard and almost up against brick wall, or just going parity with Rouse and gunning for it. And it helped that he had his own site and he had enough margins to kind of play with it. But that was the big kind of, not light bulb moment, but the big change.
Interesting. Right, and we'll end on dirty food secrets.
Oh God, okay.
You said there were a couple, but
yeah. So I mean, it's funny when you hear the question dirty food secrets, you're thinking about like, I don't know, what kind of like manky desserts you have and like how do you? But I've got three, and they're all pretty different, all kind of weird. So number one is I order lemon and herb Nando's, which is a disgrace, but I do it, and I have medium hot sauce on the side to make myself seem more kind of tough. But yeah, lemon and herbs is my thing, and even that is a bit of a struggle to be honest. The next one is this quite bizarre, but at 15, 16, I was completely and utterly obsessed with breakfast cereal, to the extent that I'm not sure how long this lasted, but I have a distinct memory of like getting up at middle of the night, 1, 2 in the morning, and eating 4 bowls of whatever cereal there was, like raisin wheat, Cheerios. I think this was back in the day with Special K was thing. I had 4 bowls in about 15 minutes, and it was just, I think, yeah, it dawned on me that was quite strange. That was a short-lived but very bizarre food secret.
Okay.
And the last one is that now I'm a pretty good chef. Like, do all the cooking at home. Developed a cookbook for Manilife, admittedly with a lot of help from 2 incredible chefs you might know, Sophie Godwin and Adam Bush. But at university, I was at a laughing stock. My go-to, I think, was tagliatelle, chicken goujons, mushrooms, like just doused in creme fraiche and Nando's peri peri, and that one was medium. And everyone was like, "Gee, this is a disgrace." But now I'm so formerly probably not even a foodie or whatever food lover. Now elite food loving chef. So yeah, that's my 3.
No, they're brilliant. We're a big fan of Nando's here, so don't.
Yeah, I think everyone loves Nando's.
Yeah, it's our go-to. We just discovered there's one near the 8:30 in Exeter, so when we go down to Cornwall now, we can stop there and makes the trip nice. So just quickly, I know we've sort of worked together on and off over the past and around. So tell me a little bit about the food club and how it was at the beginning and how it worked.
So it was just. I mean, I imagine it might have changed a bit since then because it was a while ago. But it was awesome because it was a support network in you. Like, you helped kind of again demystify a lot of the industry, put us in touch with lots of great people. It was an element of what's the word? Social proof, I guess. So before I met you, I'd go into a shop and be like, "Yeah, Manilife, buy it from me. I'll deliver it to your mum's car." And then it became Manilife, part of our food club, no Marcus. You can sort it through him. It was really, like, definitely really helpful, kind of specifically in the early days. And then since then, we don't speak as much anymore, but it's always nice to, when we bump into each other and one of us picks up the phone, always got like the inside track of what's going on.
That's really important. I mean, I've always tried to, because people think it's really technical or get very, and it is a very simple process. You manufacture something, you find somebody to buy it, they put it in their system, they sell it, and that's how the system works. And it's and it's just making it as simple, not as complicated as people think. So really interesting.
I think the big learning from you is, like, make it simple for the customer, and that goes from like an independent shop to Tesco. It's like so much of these guys' headaches come from supply chain challenges and like handing you through administrative processes. And if you just, and it works with everything. It's like even your sale. If you make your sale very clear on, we talk about category stories, and it's like, this is what you range, these limitations, this is how we fill it. If you take this out, this is what we think will happen. And thereafter, you'll have the same number of brands, but you'll have X number of new customers paying this much more. Like, it's all quite straightforward. And I think a lot of people, and I remember you telling me this early on, a lot of people get very obsessed with selling the product and not the story. And the story is around not just your story, but how you will help them achieve something that they care about.
This is what I'm saying. We're all trying to. I always say we're all trying to go on holiday, and it's how we can help each other have a better holiday. And if you can offer the margin, you can offer the sales, and you can offer the evidence. If they give you some money, they're going to get money in return for what they gave you. Then it's absolutely fine. You provenance. I mean, I get all that, but at the same time, margin and sales. I use it every day. You can show somebody that it makes sales. Mate, so nice to catch up. So nice to chat. I think we could go on for hours. We've time. But Stuart, thank you so much for chatting today, and thank you so much.
No worries, Marcus. Efficient podcast, probably the most efficient one I've ever been on. So well done.
Yes, thank you.
See you
Cheers,
later.
mate. See you soon.
All right.